The Fujifilm x100v is the perfect camera, for me at least, and here are my thoughts and kind of why I think so. But first of all, welcome. This is my first kind of talking head video for this channel. If you are interested in the Fujifilm x100v, please do like and subscribe to this channel because I will be making a lot more videos on this camera specifically. I like it that much. But anyways, let's get started. This is not a tech or spec review. I will be going a little bit into what it can do for me in terms of capabilities, but I want to talk more as well along the lines of feeling, how it's the perfect camera for my purposes and the kind of content I create and whatnot. Let's start off with the design and the aesthetic because the shape and form factor of this camera is amazing. Let's be real, this camera is gorgeous. It is one of the most aesthetically pleasing cameras on the market right now. It looks like a film camera, but modern, and that's exactly what it is. So what I really like about this camera is the edges. Over the iterations of the x100v, the camera has gone through many different aesthetic changes, very subtle but very noticeable as well. This one has very sharp edges, which I really like. I know some of the previous versions have kind of more rounded edges. I like this one's design better because the x100v is a little more stealthy because it's sharper, and it looks a little more modern because it's sharper. Now, the x100v is small. It's not tiny like the smallest compact camera, but it's small, around the size of the XT30, but it still maintains a premium weight feel to it. And this is something I didn't think I would appreciate until I got the camera, because I wanted something smaller, so I would think, lighter is better. But the fact that this has a good weight to it makes it feel less cheap. It doesn't feel like I'm holding like a plastic camera, but more that I'm holding a metal aluminum camera. So I really like that about the x100v. Next up, I want to talk about the lens a little bit because pancake lenses are my favorite. I like the idea of having a smushed lens that's very compact and small, but that's also able to capture amazing image quality. And this is something the Fujifilm x100v's lens really does a good job at. It's a small form factor. 35mm is probably my favorite focal length equivalent, and it has a very wide aperture at f2. It's a cute lens, it's tiny, but it doesn't have any of the flaws of the previous lens. Mainly that it's sharp at f2. Before, apparently, the other iterations weren't as sharp at f2. So to be able to preserve that kind of image quality in such a small form factor is one of the best selling elements of this camera. Next up, we have manual dials. Now, it doesn't have as many as like some of the other Fujifilm cameras, but it has just enough. Namely, the aperture ring I really like, the autofocus switch I really appreciate, and the best manual dial that this camera has is the combined ISO and shutter speed dial. The reason why I like this so much is because it takes two elements and combines them into one, so it saves space while also staying functional. You don't want too many dials, you want just enough, and I feel like this one has just the perfect amount of dials available to it. Similarly, it's updated now. So I think in the previous version, the ISO and shutter speed dial had like this kind of click problem where you couldn't really push it down properly, but it's better now and it looks sleeker, it performs better, whatever. It's better. Now, let's get into a little bit what I use this camera for, because I actually use this camera for a lot of video making and video shooting. The lighting keeps changing on me. Sorry about that, guys. It's a cloudy day, so it keeps getting brighter and darker, but I gotta get this done, so whatever. The first type of videos I make with this camera is talking head videos like this, where you can just set the camera up, start shooting, and it provides amazing image quality, mainly because of the turn of film simulation. Now, what a lot of people think about this camera is that it has a time limit to it, right? It can only shoot 1080 to 15 minutes, and it can only shoot 4K to about like 10 minutes or something. That's not really a problem for me because I usually don't go over 10 minutes of talking, and if I do, I can just use an external recorder because this camera is actually really good at exporting up to 10-bit 422 video onto something like the Atomos Ninja 5, and it doesn't have a time limit for that. So the next type of video content I use this camera for is for recording sports and videos in sports. So I partake in a sport called martial arts tricking, which is just like flips and kicks and stuff like that. And I need a camera to set up and record me so I can study my movements, study my tricking, study my training, and get better. And this camera does all of that for me. The last type of video content I use this camera for is probably my favorite, and that is just to record everyday life around me. Because this is kind of like an everyday camera, I can bring it with me everywhere I go. And so whenever I'm hanging out with friends, I'm chilling, or we're going traveling on a trip or something like that, I can use this camera for video content and photography content to just document the world around me. So next up, we have photographic content. I typically shoot video, but I bought this camera with the intent to take more pictures. And the reason being is the only way to get better at videography is by taking more pictures, because photography is kind of like a different element. You have to really focus on composition, lighting, etc., etc. And that's something this camera has really forced me to do. Whenever I hold this camera, I want to take more pictures, and therefore it has leveled up my photography and videography immensely. The last thing I want to talk about in this camera are the film simulations, because the film simulations are amazing. Now, typically when a camera has like, color profiles and stuff like that, they're usually like a gimmick. They're not actually meant to be used because the quality isn't actually that good. But that's the astounding thing about Fujifilm that I think they do really well, is that their film simulations are all really, really, really good. Like everything just looks amazing when you're using them, and you don't have to worry too much about like image quality dropping and stuff like that, because they're meant to be used like that. And a lot of them are taken from old film stock and old film profiles, and it gives it a really like retro look. So the film simulations are actually legitimate, and my favorite ones are Eterna, mainly for video, because it gives you kind of like a softer in-between F-log that you don't really need to grade, but you can choose to grade if you want to. This camera shoots F-log as well, but I just always use Eterna. When taking pictures, my favorite film simulations are Classic Negative and Classic Chrome, mainly because I like how Classic Negative renders highlights, and I like how Classic Chrome renders blues. They're both really, really good, and alongside that, the best black and white film simulation would be Acros. So this camera kind of does it all. It makes photography and videography fun, and ever since getting this camera, my perspective on shooting photos and videos has changed. I really legitimately think that. Anyways, I kind of rushed through that. If I forgot anything, I'll probably make an updated video later, but if you did like this video, please do like and subscribe. I'll be making more videos, mainly on the Fujifilm x100v, but also if you have any questions about this camera or you're thinking about buying it, leave it down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Peace.